like go up to the camera, like spin and turn it to show something, then spin it back to yourself.
Yeah.
There's a station in Albany that I got rid of all of their trucks except their
Is this the one that you
just use nothing but just that's
Oh, that gets every night.
no, but also I mean it's not that's not especially in rural areas up in the Socrates Mountains or it's just you go to the Adirondacks, you go over to the Berkshires, you go south to and you're just
and you're running out to deadline, so that way you can't move it.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that would suck. Because I mean, the quality is already down here. It would like really plummet.
Yeah.
You had to run your life.
I don't think they would do.
I'm running out of stuff to tell you.
It depends on the station. My old one did.
Seriously, that's a corner of Goose corner, C-O-R-E.
All we have is our stupid mobile PMTs.
We have one, and nobody ever knows where it is because it's in one of the three offices. So yesterday, oh yeah, run out to that with the backpack. That backpack's in Harrisburg.
City may be worse than standing because I was sitting in that tennis.
It's just we all traded around. And nobody's here.
Who was telling me? What was it?
Yeah. Sometimes.
Well, yeah, I mean that was so when they first got it. And I've even used one before, and one other person may have. And we went out one day with it. The live shot was all screwed up because of something that they had done back on the station end with the audio. And then, because they literally just put it in, didn't train any of the guys in master on it. And so then they never wanted to use it. Producers just thought, oh, why do that? Get bad. And it was a good 3 weeks before anybody used it again that wasn't. I think we used it a couple times on weekends when all those people, when management wasn't in, it's like, let's fuck around and use it. And then eventually they said that, like, hey, paying $1,000 a month for this.
Wow. Yeah, it's like our mobile PMT. Whenever they take it live, because the producers take like it's like an 8-second delay. Even nobody knows. You can change the delay.
So there's two profiles. Yeah, you have a lower quality one that's for your live shot.
Regardless, like, okay, so there's no, you know there's an 8-second delay. I don't know, if you 8 seconds out, like, what the hell? If it was us, if the shoe was on their foot, they would tell us to deal with it. So this is their workaround. They take it live, the camera out the front, and then have the recorder on the inside on the phone doing the phone call. Yeah. And so the recorder's in the vehicle going live, but the camera shot is just, you're seeing the front camera shot, you never see the recorder, and the recorder's on the phone, just so the producers don't have to deal with the delay.
Oh my gosh. With our terror deck, we have a delay, but they always just cue us early. That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
Oh, with us? If you have a pulse, you can produce that.
The only weird thing we do is some of the reporters can do it and can talk over the anchor, and some of the reporters can just you have
either way, it's a everything else will work. Yeah, because it does both. It does microwave too. And so we got another one. They bought another one. It's Lancaster. But this one doesn't have microwave, so it was only like $100,000. It's been sitting. We got it back in, I want to say November, late November, early December. It's been sitting in our parking lot. Has not moved. I think it's moved spaces, but it's still not ready to be used.
Yeah, you don't mind
Well, that's capital. Evidently capital. Oh, because it comes to raises. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they have no problem buying all of it. Or don't need. Same with consultants. Yeah, you do. So just tell them.
It's the greatest thing.
And he does these he posts these like memes.
Oh, yeah.
It's the funniest thing ever. Because they're all spot on.
Yeah, the one,
You friended them?
yeah.
Yeah, like this one. Like one thing that's supposed to be
The thumbs up photo.
yeah, thumbs up photo. Where's the other? Is there something wrong with this earpiece? I can barely hear anything but what you're saying. No, that's the earpiece. Supposed to sound good. Yeah, he's been out there for ever since he left our station.
Scott was telling me that he remembered someday that picture was taken. Yeah.
Wait, that was a local guy in that picture?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see that
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. Thumbs up photo.
That's funny. Who did he work for? You
Our
guys?
station, yeah. He actually trained in it.
Yeah.
They all must be.
Strong stream.
They're here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you all doing?
Great.
Good.
What do you want to do?
We'll be starting in just a few minutes. Actually, we were meeting with the family members of the deceased at Manheim Township's police station. And the meeting went a bit longer because they had a lot of questions, and we wanted to do everything we could to answer all the questions that they had. So I think the district attorney is also a little delayed. He should be here in a couple minutes, and when he arrives, we'll begin the press conference.
How many of you will be? He's going to get chairs ready for you.
I know the chief is going to be standing up here, and I'm not sure how many members of Manheim Township will be standing, but at least three, between 3 and 5.
Do we want them standing or sitting? Does it matter?
I mean, if they stand,
Can we get some?
you're going to need a podium.
Need a podium.
Well, you want to get some light stands and does everybody have C clamps?
Yeah, I can
I'll
work.
have you all work out this detail.
I say this time. I mean, the table's already there, the stand's already there. I mean, for the mic stand with the light stand.
What time for that?
What's that? How you guys
Where
doing?
they'll fold over.
Makeshift podium or
No, I don't.
have them sit? Okay.
Yeah, just tell them, anybody who's not talking.
Yeah, they can just sit closer to the.
Or if you need,
Yeah, we say 3 because it's.
we can just slide it
We'll
down.
switch them out. Yeah, because there's actually an extra.
Oh, sorry. Scooch in a little bit.
To the stands, to make it like a T thing. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I'm just not aware of what's going on around me. That should be good.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, you can sit down. No, I'm not gonna sit.
They named.
That they've been #1 forever.
Oh, yeah. And at one point,
I'm just gonna go through there though, so.
at one point they were the 4th highest rated newscast in the country after the Title 3 New York station. They make money now with this. They have all this. Yeah, it's not it's nice to have toys.
Sorry. I mean, there's like no other station. Like you go down there, and they see you. They don't think you're with. You know,
Oh, yeah.
where you're
No,
going.
absolutely. I mean, do you know that part of Clerks when they talk about the stupid questions they have to answer? When I was working at 17 down there, we used to always make that same joke about all the dumb questions people ask you and just rapid fire them. And that's the biggest one is, oh, do you work for, oh, are you Action News? No, the big 17 on the side. Is that a 6?
I had a, I think it was you and Christina. We were at the mall. There we go live. And they're like, hey, you guys, and we were on the big truck. And something like that. Hey, you guys would chat with us.
I feel like people get 21 and 27 confused. Do they do that too? They're like, ABC 21, right? No. 27.
They start saying yes.
Yes.
Well, if you look at the books, I used to be special projects, which are so relevant, and it's exactly what we're right now. So
Yeah.
I don't know what's credit for.
Right.
Obviously, Tracy, if you put it at a regular basis, you guys could have the power couple of
And then I would kill myself. Poor Eddie. I've only
That's
worked
about
with
right.
him once.
Like, I never knew which ed I was going to get either. Either social ed or like this crazy ed.
Well, so I worked with him once, and we were actually doing like a cool story, and I was like really trying to work it. And
It's a cool work.
I kind of got pissy with him about because I wanted him to do something, and he's like, my knee, you know, tell me about his knee and everything. And I kind of felt really bad. So I got sorry. Yeah. He told me about his blood pressure. I was like, oh my God, Ed, I'll never make you do anything again.
Doesn't stop him from keeping his jacket on.
I was just gonna say, I remember being in Stanley, it was like 98 degrees. He was like bright red, and he just used his jacket on.
Wait. You know, like super hot out because he's wearing the white jacket.
When I first met Sam, I was terrified of him.
Talking about down Philly or?
Yeah, because he's never wear anything but this that stereotypical reporter jacket, the like tan with the belt and everything. And so he would look like
I just have it plugged
a
in
mob
because it drains the
hitman
battery.
or like
Wi-Fi on
the
it.
most grizzled old beat reporter ever. And I was terrified. I thought this Frankenstein man is gonna just rip my heart out one day. And then I heard, then talked to him once and realized that he's just a teddy bear. But oh my God, I was so terrified of him for a long time.
Yeah. It was, we were in heaven. It was scary. Actually, no. It was, our director was Mary. Was Mary there when you were there? She was a screamer. Holy cow.
But I ended up loving her because she was.
Oh yeah, I mean, she was super sweet. Like,
Yeah.
sweetest woman, but man,
She's very sweet.
in the director's room.
When I was in H I used to come to all his interstitials there, and so you'd have to hook him up. We would hear the whatever the director said he was, wherever he was doing it for, Fox, CNN, whatever. There was this guy one time. He just did not stop swearing. Every other word he was screaming, and every other word he was like, and this is, I don't know which network it was. Jesus Christ, how is this guy not blown a gasket? He not gotten fired just for aneurysm.
Yeah, or fine, yeah.
No, those fucking guys.
I remember one night we were going Sidmore. I was doing the Sat Shop. I got to our station.
Yeah.
CNN. And it's like Frank.
I still have my gloves, which I literally wore like 3 weeks ago.
It was like a couple minutes before I hit.
Normally I swallow like one person. You know, I'm tempting it yet. Like, I've never seen it come out.
That's awesome. wasn't in Philly and nobody knows where it came from, but it was all these like network guys who were waiting outside of what looked like a federal courthouse or something. And a car comes down the street and so you're just seeing that like car come, it's pulling into, you know, the garage, and all of a sudden it's still like runs to the window, starts shooting. And then the guy winds out and you see this big that guy's out here since it was dark. You know, they were fucking clicking pictures. And he's just surrounding this shouting guy. It was amazing. It was either New York or DC, but maybe Old West. Yeah. Oh yeah, this Mike have you ever seen the Terry Schiavo thing that him and Zach Moffin made?
This is your fault. Like his were mostly all like live shots.
Oh, okay.
Like this is how it was something. And it's Jim. And all these people.
Oh, yes. Oh yeah. Yep. Usually the spaces like that. Yeah. Well, that. That is one of my favorite stories, though. John Leonard.
I would have to wash my lens after I shot that.
John Leonard is a shooter at Channel 6 who was a 17. He's amazing. I mean, he's just really incredible. One of the best guys in that market. And his last day before he went to PBI, he had to go out to Washington Square Park to go shoot some bullshit press. And you know, John's looking around. What do you see? Oh, there's this homeless guy.
Answering tech support.
So start shooting.
You know,
And John, being the consummate talented photographer he is, not only did he shoot from 3 different angles.
At one point, the homeless guy looks right at the camera, and
he's laying on top of a party bench. It's incredible.
Oh my God.
That's amazing video. I love that. That John did not just shoot the homeless. Shot him from 3 different angles.
I had some nice depth of field.
That's right. Those greens were just popping.
Oh my God. That's the key there.
They also, did he have the one that John Leonard and Tim Furlong had made of when John got the live truck stuck in the mud and they made a package out of it?
I think so,
Yeah.
Where he got it, he was up, it was like 2 summers ago. There's these bad storms that rolled through southern Lancaster County, and they made him have him come up and shoot it. And so he was in the live truck, and he called, like, the scene was pretty good by the time he got there, so he calls me, just had this well, evidently, it was like out where there was like a baseball field, and there was kids playing baseball, and they all took shelter near this pavilion. The pavilion got like blown over by the wind, and like some people got hurt, like seriously. But so it was on this middle of this field, so he saw the tracks of the fire trucks.
And then we can pull
So he started following them out. Well, it had been raining for an hour or so.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hey.
Good afternoon.
You have to slide your mics in.
I'm sorry again.
Sure.
You good? Yeah.
Sorry for the delay. Again, we were meeting with the family members of the deceased. You know, they had many questions, and we wanted to be able to provide them all the answers that we could, and it ran a little late. So we appreciate your patience and indulgence in waiting for us. I'm Steve Diamantoni, Lancaster County Coroner. To my right is Chief Harkins of Manheim Township Police Department. To my left is District Attorney Craig Stetton.
Now we'll have audio issues.
Yeah, and I'm getting terrible hum off that. Off some of these.
You getting hum?
Hey. So I'm going to say I have an XLR.
No, so is he. It's a beautiful day. Would you like to do this outside instead?
Yeah, I'd like to see you set up. We need to have this hum corrected before we proceed.
Yeah.
All right.
Just a favor, while we're waiting, just hold up that little piece of white paper you have in front of you.
Yep.
You good?
You get that?
Yep. Everyone's good? Okay. On November 28, 2013, the coroner's office was called by Manheim Township Police Department to the homes of Aida, Cora, and Darryl Morton, who were found deceased. We transported their decomposed bodies to the Lancaster Forensic Center, where an autopsy was performed the following day. At the time of the autopsy, we looked carefully on the decedent's body for any evidence of trauma that would suggest foul play, and found no evidence of trauma on the body. Now, granted, the bodies were decomposed, and all skin details may not have been clearly visible, but any type of major trauma that would have caused their death would have been identified. And we also did, in studying the bodies internally, we saw no evidence of anything that would suggest foul play or significant trauma to their bodies. We did complete autopsies on both bodies and found no clear-cut cause for their death. We did notice that their tissues of their bodies were cherry red in color, and that's consistent with carbon monoxide poisoning and several other causes of toxicity. We subsequently drew studies and sent tests to a laboratory looking for causes of death. Now, there are many things that we look for, and because of the condition of the bodies, we drew a broad panel test. We looked for prescription drugs. We looked for drugs that are abused recreationally. We looked for different types of poisons, and we looked for environmental toxins. In short, we looked for hundreds of different substances within the body that could cause death. I have to tell you, I think we're all used to going and having lab work done in doctor's office and getting results fairly quickly, or going to an emergency department and getting results within an hour or two. This is not the case with bodies that are decomposed. The fluids from those bodies and tissues of the body are oftentimes very difficult and complex to evaluate and take special testing. It is not unusual in doing that very difficult, sophisticated testing to have weeks, for that testing to take weeks, and for us to wait long periods of time before we can get the results. we were able to determine fairly early on that Aida Cora had carbon monoxide in her system that we believe was sufficient to cause her death. However, the initial studies that were performed did not show evidence of carbon monoxide on Darryl Morton. There are many different methodologies laboratories can utilize to try to extract substances like carbon monoxide. And talking to Robert Middleburg, who is one of the chief toxicologists at the forensic laboratory we use, despite how common carbon monoxide poisoning is, carbon monoxide is perhaps one of the most difficult substances to extract from tissue that's decomposed. So we initially looked at blood. We subsequently looked at other tissues, which I believe included the liver and kidney. And each one of those tests took weeks to perform and weeks to get the result from. And in addition to testing each of those substances, different methodologies in the laboratory were used for each one of those tests and studies. So even when we were getting negative results with one methodology, we used another methodology to try to determine what those results were. At that same time, we ran additional tests looking for evidence of other types of poisons or toxins or drugs or any type of substance that may have caused their death. After a very long period of time, we submitted tissue from Darryl's spleen. And we picked the spleen to submit tissue from because the function of a spleen is to remove damaged blood cells from the body. So, when our bone marrow makes red blood cells, the blood cells stay in the circulation about 120 days, but during that period of time, they get beat up and they get little nicks and damage to the vessels. And the purpose of our spleen is to remove those red cells from the body. So we thought that would be a nice repository of red blood cells where carbon monoxide could be found. And we were able to find a level of carbon monoxide that was lethal in Darryl as well. Just as a way of background for everybody, the purpose of hemoglobin, which is a pigment found in red blood cells, is to carry oxygen throughout the body. And each hemoglobin molecule carries 4 molecules of oxygen. And get oxygen in the lung, it takes it throughout the body, it's deposited in the tissues, and provides the tissues of the body and all the organs of the body with sufficient oxygen to live. Carbon monoxide works by binding to the same place on the hemoglobin that oxygen binds. And what it does, unfortunately, is holds on to that hemoglobin more than 200 times, with more than 200 times greater affinity than oxygen does. So when it binds on, it doesn't want to get off. And as a result, it blocks oxygen from being carried to the other tissues of the body because it sticks to the hemoglobin for a much longer period of time than oxygen would. It also has other properties. It actually causes the oxygen to be released much more slowly. So in doing so, it also prevents further additional oxygenation of the body as well. So relatively small amounts of carbon monoxide cause huge amounts of damage. Carbon monoxide is a product of combustion, any type of combustion. Often it's as a result of gasoline being burned in automobiles. Any type of burning can cause carbon monoxide to be formed. The gas itself is colorless and odorless and tasteless. So it's possible for individuals to become overcome by carbon monoxide and not have any clue that this has all occurred. We proceeded with this investigation in a very methodical and detailed fashion. There are over 85 million substances that can be identified out there in the world. And obviously we can't test for 85 million things when we're looking for cause and manner of death. So in conjunction with our pathologist, forensic pathologist, Dr. Ross, and the forensic toxicologist at NNS Lab, we proceeded in a very methodical fashion. We tested for more than 400 substances in both of the decedent's bloodstream in the process of our evaluation. And we used, as I mentioned earlier, different methodologies in doing that testing to try to come up with the results that we needed to come up with so we could determine the decedent's cause and manner of death. So I can say with a high degree of medical certainty that Aida, Cora, and Darryl Morton died as a result of carbon monoxide poisoning. I can also say that I can't say with certainty what the manner of death is. So my manner is undetermined, but the cause is clearly carbon monoxide poisoning. District Attorney, do you have anything to add?
Can you come a little bit closer, Craig, just switch a little bit in?
Chief, do you want to talk first, or you want me to do it?
Can we ask some
Let's
questions?
just move.
Oh, yeah. I guess that's the best thing to do.
Yeah, we
Okay,
go, Joe.
I'm curious, what about the investigation dovetail
Well-
with what Steve found in terms of, did you find any evidence that there was a car running in the garage, that there was any kind of combustion that would have produced carbon monoxide in the home that could have led to their death?
Yes, what I can tell you, what we observed at the scene is a car parked in the garage, which was locked. The car was backed in to the home, which is a townhome. The exhaust pipes were facing towards the door, which enters into the house, and just on the other side of that door, a short hallway, and then the heat pump, which pumps the heat through the house. At the time of our observance, the car had a fob on the front seat. The fob was necessary to start the car. When the officers were present at the scene, the car was not running, and on further inspection, they found at that point it had a dead battery.
Was there gas in the?
Yes, there was still gas left in the tank.
So where does that lead you in your investigation? What are you determining from those facts that you
Our theory at this point in time is that obviously the only mechanism there to deliver carbon monoxide is the car, and that someone started the car, and the car eventually choked itself out because of a lack of oxygen in the garage. That's our theory.
Was there any evidence that either Aida or Darryl had used the car shortly before their deaths? Had it been driven? Had anyone seen them in it?
There's no suggestion of that at all at this point.
Is it suspicious that the car was running? Did someone intentionally leave the car running?
That's something that we don't know and may never know. We don't know.
Did you find the keys in the ignition?
No, there's no key. It's a fob. It's a push-button car. The fob was laying on the front seat.
What kind of car was it?
I believe it was a Lincoln.
Did the family say if they typically left that key fob in? I know, with that type of car, you can leave it there.
I'm not sure that, to be honest with you. It's something that I'd have to ask someone else about.
There's no other source of combustion, a space heater, or anything else that could have been other than the car?
No, that's the only source in that property, on that property.
How long do we believe they were in the building deceased?
We would estimate a couple of days.
How many? 3?
It's difficult with decomposition that is moderately advanced to make a very narrow window. But I think 2 or 3 days would be reasonable to assume.
Any indication there was suicide involved? That could have been an intentional act by either Aida or Darryl?
We saw no evidence at the scene that it was suicide.
Talk a little, were they physically different sizes? Would it take a lot longer for one of them to, go unconscious and then a little while longer for?
That's a good question. There are individual differences in susceptibility to the toxicity of carbon monoxide. At a certain level, everybody dies, but before you get to the level that's toxic for everybody, there can be varying degrees of toxicity. What I can tell you is very young individuals and very old individuals are most susceptible. Kids particularly are susceptible because they breathe more quickly, and the levels of carbon monoxide in their system that we measure as carboxyhemoglobin become much higher and become higher more quickly than they would an adult. The older an individual, the more susceptible they are because the tissues and organs of the body desperately need oxygen to live. And if an organ is damaged or compromised in any way as a result of diseases of aging, they're going to be more susceptible to death at an earlier age. For example, if somebody has heart disease, they're going to tolerate carbon monoxide toxicity less because they can't afford to have any less oxygen delivered to their heart.
So in this case, would it be feasible, that they would almost go unconscious at the same time? I think they were
They might have gone unconscious at about the same time, or there may have been some difference in time that they became unconscious. Similarly, it's difficult to say with certainty when each one of them would have died. It's possible to go unconscious as a result of carbon monoxide poisoning, but still continue to breathe and have your heart continue to beat for variable periods of time.
What is it like to die from carbon monoxide poisoning? Is it painful or is it asphyxiation? What's the mechanism of death?
It's generally painless, and it's generally the loss of consciousness is often rapid. You know, in my medical practice, I've had some close calls with patients who had furnaces, for example, that aren't functioning normally. I can remember one case, and this is somebody who was one of my patients who was pregnant. She noticed that her a family member had lost consciousness. She smelled nothing. Again, you know, carbon monoxide is odorless, and she was concerned, called 911 to bring an ambulance, and then suddenly lost consciousness. She didn't see it was coming. She didn't feel particularly ill. There are many people who do experience other symptoms of carbon monoxide toxicity. People can become sleepy and lethargic. Their judgment can become impaired. You know, they can feel nauseous, have feelings of malaise. They can be sick to their stomach and vomit. Sometimes they can have loss of bowel and bladder control. You know, and in this case, there was evidence of loss of bowel control in the decedents in the home. So that certainly would be consistent with carbon monoxide toxicity.
2 days after the bodies were found, I think it was on the following Saturday, the police were called to a neighboring house where, and they actually did carbon monoxide testing. We reported on it at the time. Is there any evidence that could have been related to what was happening in that house, that there was lingering fumes, or?
No, that was a precaution. It's a twin. Both houses are connected, and we thought it best to make sure we go through that second home at that point.
Let's talk about the timeline. I think you did a good job of explaining, you know, 85,000 substances you have to test for, but we're here nearly 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have worked together a long time. I don't know any toxicology that's taken that long. Really, why so long? What's your reaction to it?
Well, I you know, we were as anxious for a result as you, and we were on the phone frequently with Rob Middleworth, the toxicologist who we were dealing with at the laboratory we work with. I mean, the challenge is each individual sample, because of the methodology, takes 3 or 4 weeks to process. So when we're processing, initially we processed blood for carbon monoxide that made the most sense. Darryl's blood tested negative. So we had a real challenge on our hands because we had 2 decedents in a home. For 2 people to die at the same time is highly unusual, and I think that's why this case has sparked so much interest. And one individual had carbon monoxide and the other didn't. And we had to come up with an explanation for that. And the initial tests that we've done were negative. Now again, in addition to doing the studies, which may take 3 or 4 weeks, there are different methodologies you can do with the same sample. You know, we ended up using something like a gas chromatography, mass spectrometry initially, which is what's usually used to make that determination. And, you know, when we had negative results from that, we extracted additional gas from tissue and then did a study called inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry, which is a little bit more complex test and does better with iron-containing agents, which hemoglobin has. So when we found that sample was negative, you know, we had that frustration too, so we began testing other tissues. So we tested...
The spleen is what really broke this open for you, though.
That's correct. Because when we placed the other tissues were negative. Mm-hmm. When we tested the spleen, and again, we chose the spleen because of the large number of red cells that might be present in the spleen, and the fact that being so internal, it may have decomposed a little less than some of the other tissues. We were able to find evidence of carbon monoxide in the spleen.
If they had been dead one day, would this have been easier?
The longer period of time from the time of death, the more difficult it becomes to extract many toxins and poisons, and particularly carbon monoxide. So certainly the tighter time frame would make it easier. You know, if one of you were worried about being poisoned by carbon monoxide and went to the emergency department, they would draw blood and have a result within an hour. The blood test we do in the laboratory is called a carboxyhemoglobin level. But lots of things happen as a result of decomposition. And the other thing that's challenging is if somebody suffers a brain injury as a result of carbon monoxide, and they're rendered unconscious but still continue to live and breathe, and carbon monoxide dissipates from the air, technically what could occur is their carbon monoxide level, carboxyhemoglobin level, would drop in their system. So there are many, many variables that come into play in making those types of determinations.
What about the scene of the home? Family members said that the bathroom was in disarray, the safe was empty. There were some questions about the things that the family members found when they went in there. The fact that Mr. Morton had groceries in his car that had not been unloaded. Are there questions that police have about some of those things that they have or have not been able to resolve?
Most of those things I think that we have resolved. The safe itself was not locked when the first police officer got there. It was closed. There were slippers stored in front of the safe. They opened the safe and they verified that in fact the safe did contain a number of coins. That was photographed. In terms of, what was the other, I'm sorry, the other question?
The groceries in the car.
There were groceries in the car. We're not sure why. There were even potatoes in the garage on the red Lincoln.
Do you think that
Oh,
they...
you mean sitting on top of the car?
Yes.
And you're not sure why that is?
No.
Any idea if they went food shopping and left the car running as they're unpacking the car and then just never made it any further than that? I heard the turkey was in the sink. Like,
that would be speculation. We don't know.
but as you're putting together a timeline and sort of putting it together, what is your timeline? What is your narrative of what you think happened to these people in their last couple of minutes?
The only thing I can say for sure is that I know, in fact, they passed away from carbon monoxide. I know the positions that the two bodies were in. What caused that car to start, we don't know. I mean, that's really the
Could it have been remotely started from inside the house?
I don't have any reason to believe that, but I guess anything's possible. I don't know.
But the groceries were not in the Lincoln, they were in a different car, is that
They were in a
right?
truck outside.
Outside, okay.
And the, where does this leave you? If you are specifically in charge of manner of death and now, Chief, yours is undetermined, what happens?
Well, actually, my manner is undetermined.
Your manner is undetermined, but your investigation, you now have, your determination is undetermined. What does that mean for you as a police chief now?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure.
I mean,
Thank you.
I think, obviously that's ultimately an excellent question, and that's where we're at. We're left with waiting for months to see what the cause of death is. So that sort of, in a way, hamstrings the police ability to investigate two deaths until we know, what killed them. We've got no evidence of trauma, so you don't have a traditional homicide or anything like that. There's no poisoning. We have some answers today that we didn't have before that Dr. Diamantoni's been able to provide working with the National Medical Services Lab. But it sparked a number of other questions which are going through your mind and obviously has gone through our mind about, okay, so now we know we have carbon monoxide as the cause of death. What is the mechanism of delivery of this carbon monoxide? Now, there's no evidence whatsoever that anybody hooked up a generator and had it pumped into the window of the residence for some time, causing it. So it would seem, based on the evidence that we have, that the really only viable source would have been the car, the Lincoln in the garage, that would have done this. And that's consistent with what the chief has described from the battery and the ability to do that. And I don't think you can remotely start it. I think it has to be push button start. The key doesn't have to, not in the ignition, but the key has to be in the car. So you got three people living in that house who realistically could have turned that car on for different reasons. It could have been accidentally left on, as somebody questioned. It could have been intentionally started and for different purposes. And from our point of view, with the evidence of what we have at this point in time, again, just getting this confirmation of cause of death very recently, we don't have a whole lot of answers, and that's unacceptable. I mean, our job is to find the answers for what took place, and but by the same token, we have to follow the facts, and the facts are not complete. We don't have a complete picture of what took place here. We have a cause of death, and the doctor's done his job for us and given us that information, but we need more information to tell you, to give you more accurate conclusions, and we may or may not get that. The case is undetermined, which means it's open. We're going to keep it open. This could be an accident. It could be that somebody had suicidal thoughts. It could be a homicide, and I can't tell you that. As I sit here now, the chief can't tell you that. People can have theories. People can have suggestions. You can look at things, and we, the police, have taken a number of steps to try to eliminate the different possibilities. We don't have any evidence that anyone was suicidal.
Did you look at the cell phone records and that sort of thing from both victims to see if they had talked to each other? Or?
Yeah, there was no evidence that there was no evidence consistent with really any of those conclusions from what we've been able to find, that there was any evidence of suicide, or that there were anybody that was trying to kill them, or would have had a reason to kill them, particularly in a fashion such as this, which of course risks death to anybody who's in that home. So obviously there was another individual who was residing in the home.
So let's talk about him. Has the son been cleared of any suspicion of this case?
Obviously, the case is undetermined. The case remains open. Nobody's going to come here and say today that anybody's been cleared of anything. No one's being arrested. Everybody is presumed innocent, including him. From what we know from him, he exhibited signs of carbon monoxide poisoning himself, physical signs, and that from the indications we have, his window would have been open, which may provide an explanation as to why he got sick but did not die. That doesn't complete the picture. That's just part of the information that we have. Obviously, he has cooperated with the investigators throughout and has been consistent in his accounting of the facts from the beginning.
Let's just say again, whose son is he?
He's his son, right?
Mr. Morton.
Yeah.
What's his name? His son's name?
Darryl Morton Jr.
Okay.
So is the investigation still open? Is it still active? Are you still working it? What do you do next?
Yeah, it's still an open investigation. And remember, I mean, so we just got this information, I believe, last week, confirmation from Dr. Diamantoni. So this would be an open investigation. Again, we don't know what we have, and we're going to work for that. We may never know what we have entirely. Right now, all we can tell you is what killed them, the likely source of what killed them, the mechanism of how that got started, whether it was started on purpose, whether it was left on by accident, whether someone was moving the potatoes. You know, I don't have the answers to that. As I can say, you know, we've taken additional steps with the son, of talking to him, and he's been cooperative and has provided answers up to this point that we're left with really not having any. From our point of view, no one's getting arrested, certainly today.
And what was the relationship? They were boyfriend-girlfriend, correct? Not a married couple?
That's correct.
And just looking back on this, the three of us together, I don't know that maybe this was an ideal way to do this. Have we learned anything from this? Is there any way that if this similar situation happens again, it can be done better? You think it was done badly? Am I making a judgment?
But there's always, I mean, that's a good question, and I think one of the things that we always do when we're working on cases like this is to look at them as they're going on. Is there something we could have done better? I mean, there's no question that things could always be done better. I presented a unique challenge to the doctor in this particular case with having one showing signs and not the other showing obvious signs. You know, everybody's working towards the same goal. We constantly are trying to talk to each other if there's something that we could do better. There are some cases that simply, no matter how good of a job anybody's doing, are going to present still open questions and mysteries. That doesn't mean, so the book is not closed on this case. We still have tasks to do, particularly on our end, outside of the scientific arena, but certainly, obviously, if we get more information, then we provide that to the coroner, and he can reevaluate whether he wants to change the classification.
And it's not unusual in cases where bodies are severely decomposed to take months to get all the results back, especially when you're proceeding in a very focused, expeditious fashion and working diligently as a team. Again, it's not a matter of setting a lab and getting a result back in an hour. It's a matter sometimes of going down one path with one type of tissue, not finding what you want, and then making it discover what you may be looking for, and then continuing to look for ways to try to find that information. And what we do is, we work with one of the country's best. I mean, Ron Middleburg's superb, and we have many, many, many conversations with him. In addition, what we did, because we really wanted to do a very comprehensive investigation, is that we also involved the expertise of other forensic pathologists. We, Dr. Ross, our forensic pathologist, presented the case and sent information to Isidore Mihalikis, who was a forensic pathologist in Lehigh Valley, and actually sent the case to someone by the name of Joseph Burton, who's he's retired at this point, but still a really smart guy, and he's a very accomplished forensic pathologist from Atlanta.
Were they as equally miffed a little bit?
Well, no. I think everybody was looking at it and said, "Boy, this looks like it's carbon monoxide poisoning." But I can't make that determination until we have carbon monoxide.
Yeah, until you have it.
So the
she
other
was showing signs,
yes, she was.
And he did not.
That's correct, and it was a very complicated picture because we can't put. I can't say that someone died from carbon monoxide poisoning unless I have evidence of carbon monoxide. And I think it's just, it was incredibly important for us to get that information. And we work closely with Dr. Middleburg to try to find that information.
And where is he from again?
He's at NMS Laboratories.
National Medical Services.
And where is that located? Physically located?
Philadelphia. Willow Grove, outside Philadelphia.
Okay.
One of the things that, I think it would be, we met with a family just before meeting with you, and there were probably 15 to 20 members of the family that we met with, and we shared, the information. And one of the things that we share with them, which we haven't yet shared with you, but I think it's important for you to understand. Now, before I tell you, obviously it's not dispositive. It's not admissible in court. It doesn't prove anything, but it is a tool that we use in cases where we don't necessarily have all the answers. And when there's an individual, such as the son in this case, who would have had access and the ability to turn the car on, we typically, at some point, offer them the opportunity to take a polygraph. He had initially volunteered to do that from the beginning, but since we didn't have a cause of death, we don't like to do polygraphs unless we have specific information to ask them specific questions. And in this case, when Dr. Diamantoni did report the specific results to us, we did once again breach that subject with him. He did participate in that, and the results of the polygraph were that he was not being deceptive, and that's the technical way of saying that he passed. Again, that's not dispositive, that doesn't close the book, but one of the things that we look at is somebody willing to do that, first of all, which says something in and of itself, and then, do they show up? Sometimes they'll say they'll do it and then don't show up, and then what are the results? And that's where we're at with him, which again doesn't provide us with any answers. It's just a tool. That doesn't mean that anything. People can successfully pass polygraph exams and not be truthful. The examiner I know personally was from our office, very experienced, saying it's non-deceptive. So it doesn't really provide any answers, but I think it's important for everyone to know, and I think it was important for the family to know, because they are left with the questions, and obviously our sympathies go with them. We all have questions, professional questions, but this is something that they've lost loved ones, and they want answers. So we just want to assure them that we're doing everything we can, and the police are doing everything they can, and we don't usually do that in very many cases, but we did it in this case, and that's the result. So.
And can you talk, he volunteered to take this, has he continued to remain distraught? Has the other family kind of supported him? Was he there with these other family members?
I'm going to answer some of that, and some of that I'm not going to answer.
Sorry, there's a lot
He has been consistent with the police from the beginning of his version of the facts. I'm not going to talk about the relationship with the family. I don't think it's appropriate for me to do that. We're looking at it clinically and from an investigator's point of view. He's answered the questions and took the polygraph, as I said, and that's part of the picture. That's not necessarily a complete picture. It doesn't give us all the answers. In fact, a polygraph that really doesn't give us any answers. It's just it's a tool that we use, particularly when we don't have clear answers in a case, and that's part of the facts that we are now comfortable sharing with you.
This was a tough one. It's still a tough one.
Yeah. And as additional information becomes available, and I think most of you probably know this, we always, as coroners, have the right to change the death certificate. So, if we rule that a death is undetermined, but we have additional information that suggests otherwise, we can change our ruling and subsequently issue a new death certificate.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
I also want to thank the Manheim Township Police because they've worked extremely hard on this case. as always, are highly professional, highly skilled, and highly focused, and do a superb job, and also the district attorney and his office for the excellent job they've done as well.
Thanks for holding this today. There's not that.
Yeah, sorry to hold you up.
That's okay.
I actually got
Can I
caught
grab
by
each of you for just 2 questions?
family when I was walking out of the building. I just couldn't walk away.
Yeah,
That was my.
Yeah, no,